sorry, blind you, I'm actually Scottish. I know I'm not wearing a kilt, but you know. And I was raised on television, so the accent, I haven't got that either, but it's in my paper. Anyways, so, first things first. Many years ago in Glasgow, I was out to a club. This was when I was younger and slightly trimmer. Anyway, I noticed that there was something on the floor. It looked like a puddle of, well, let's hope beer. So, and I didn't pay it much mind. I thought I'm going to avoid that. But then, during the course of the evening, I decided, I know, I'm going to go to the bathroom. So, making my way on over. But then suddenly, my favorite tune comes on. Can't remember the tune. That's not the important part of the story. The important part is, I quickly did a 180, started heading along. But then, I stepped through the puddle of unknown liquid. And I could feel my feet going out from under me. And I was getting teetering over to my side here. And I thought, oh no, if I stop, I'm just going to go right down. So can't have that because it's probably not beer, who knows. Anyway, so I just kept on going. And I was getting over and I was like, oh, getting to the point of no return. And then suddenly I lose my balance altogether. But just as I lose my balance, I've fallen over and my head connects with one of the tables that's bolted to the floor. And the impact blows me directly back onto my feet. And this all happened in like a split second. But then, you know, it knocked me back onto my feet. I continued, regained traction, got clear of the puddle of goodness knows what, and made it to the dance floor, danced along, didn't think much about it. You know, the rest of the night went pretty much without a hitch. Then, the next morning, me and my buddies, we were just sort of having a chat, you know, it was hangover time, you know, and then I reach up to the side of my head, and I go, oh, that hurts. And my friend goes, why does it hurt? I was like, and so I told him the story, you know, so yada yada yada, puddle, blah, 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 and his reply was, that actually happened? And I was like, what do you mean that actually happened? Because as far as he was concerned, he actually happened to be looking towards me at the time. So as far as he saw me running towards them. And then, for no reason he could fathom, I whacked my head off the table and then continued running towards them. And because he was a few drinks in, he thought, I can't have seen that. I must have been damn disappointed. I want to sound like a lunatic, so he never mentioned it. It wasn't until I brought up that I was like, oh my goodness, you know, it was because the table's bolted to the floor. I mean, 1,000,000 to 1 event. But anyway, so that very same friend, I mean, he was actually my compadre for a long time. He's much taller than me, because, well, I'm no giant, who am I kidding? But he's like, you know, 6 foot something or other. And I remember one time we were out as a group, and I was telling him for the umpteenth time, man, it is so great that you're tall, man. And he's like, well, what's the big deal about being tall? And at that very instant, I said the immortal words, well, that extra 6 inches makes all the difference. And suddenly, the group of girls that was walking past us, you know, like, pointed right towards me. And, you know, it was that I had a light bulb moment. I thought to myself, you know, their whole perspective of me is based on a tiny little audio clip. And so I thought, we can use this. So, we had a little huddle, and then we're like, okay, guys, think about it this way. Every group that we see coming towards us, come up with the most random, scary-ass soundbite, and say it just as they get into range. So that'll be their whole perspective on us. And so we all had to do a bit of improv. It's like, oh, and then the goat felt much better afterwards. And sriracha sauce is a good lubricant. We immediately went for the weirdest and scariest stuff, so that then, you know, we'd be stars in other people's stories that, you know, oh, you wouldn't believe, there was this guy walking past, and he said the goat covered in Vaseline felt much better afterwards. But anyway, so, I digress. So, anyway, also when I was a student, I scratched my cornea, which is a load of no fun, don't recommend it. But at least I didn't get the freshers flu that year. Problem was, I couldn't see, so for the first couple of months of my term, I had to sit up front for lectures. So I got to be friends with this deaf girl who had a guide dog. The guide dog is not the star of the story. But anyway, I became friends with the deaf girl and her interpreter. And the deaf girl and I actually started hanging out, but without the interpreter, because he was actually a hired interpreter. And so I wasn't going to pay for him. So we spoke through notepads, which actually meant we got better service in cafes, because people thought we were restaurant critics. Because, you know, we'd be getting our service, and then the parents would be like, and they're like, oh shit, I don't serve it that nicely. So, and at least also once people thought we were actually musicians, oh yes. Because they were like, hey, are those song lyrics you're working on? Because you're both contributing. I'm like, yeah, I see you cover my head. But anyway, also, how would I set up these meetings were? We had this really cool thing called, this was before SNS, by the way, this was in the 90s. You know, some of you guys don't remember the 90s. Anyway, so they had a thing called Type Talk. So she had a phone that would basically, you know, send text to a little person down in Liverpool. and then they would speak the text to me. And because it was in Liverpool, and by amazing coincidence, all the ladies were, well, ladies there, they all sounded Liverpudlian. And sort of like, hello, yes, it's Tanya here, even though she was Italian. It's like, oh yes, I would love to meet you for coffee. That would be splendid. And, it was harmless, it was cool. And I always knew that she was calling me, because I'd get sort of, hello, this is Tight Talk, I've got Tanya on the line for you. It's like, no kidding. But anyway, this was all well and groovy and reason, it went without a hitch until one time, well, two things coincided. First, I had a male operator, and also she happened to have a one-night stand. So I basically got a phone call, it's like, hello there. And I was like, okay, it's a man. I was like, yes, I've got Tanya on the line for you. Oh, I went to a really nice party. I met this guy, he was so handsome. I'm like, and I went back to his place. Oh yes, and then we had sex, lots of sex. Don't worry though, we used protection. Listen, it sounded like Ringo Starr was having a night stand instead of. I mean, I felt sorry for the guy because he was having to, whatever she said, she had to repeat. It's like, oh yes, I had lots of fun. And in the morning, then he walked me home to my place. It was so nice of me. He was so caring and tender. Oh, I did not envy that job. Hi, how's my time? Oh. Okay, well I guess that's enough for me. More to follow next time.